I stayed just 3 nights at the Suncrest Hill Motel in rural West Virginia, but since the first dawn, a child started calling me by my name with a thin, almost sweet voice, as if he already knew me. The problem: children were not allowed in that place, not as guests, not as visitors, not as souvenirs. If you've ever had the feeling that you're being watched while you sleep, this story is for you. Do you like mysteries? Do you like stories that stick in your head days after hearing them? So subscribe to the channel, like it and comment here where you're watching from. And just out of curiosity, have you ever heard your name being called when no one was around? My name is Nathan Holloway. I'm 42 years old, and I spend more time driving on American roads than I do at home. I've been a truck driver since I was 24, and when you live among gas stations, roadsides, and forgotten motels, you learn to sleep with noise, dealing with loneliness, and trust your instincts. But that night, high on a secluded West Virginia hill, I ignored what my instinct was screaming. It was at the end of October. The leaves had already surrendered to the ground. The mist crept along the curves of the road, and the air had that sharp smell of something wet and dead. I was coming from the north, from a delivery in Wheeling. I had eaten something light for lunch, and my plan was to arrive in Charleston before midnight, but the body can no longer handle it like before. My eyelids felt heavy, and the steering wheel shook in my hands every time I blinked for too long. I needed to stop, just for one night. The sky was overcast. The truck's radio hissed between empty frequencies, and the road seemed narrower with every kilometer. It was then, after a curve without lighting, that I saw a wooden sign affixed to a twisted tree. Suncrest Hill Motel. Single rooms, light breakfast, quiet, guaranteed. And below, in faded red ink, no children allowed. I laughed, not for the content, but for the delivery of the sentence. It seemed more like a warning than a policy. But there, in the middle of nowhere, it felt almost comforting. Silence, bed, shower. That was all I needed. I turned right and turned onto a gravel road that zigzagged up a tree-covered hillside. The headlight only illuminated a few meters at a time, and the shadows between the trunks seemed to move, as if something was waiting for the truck to pass before crossing the road. At the top, the building appeared like an ancient memory. Oh, Suncrest Hill Motel. 2 low blocks of rooms arranged in an L, with a small reception in the center and a cracked grey concrete courtyard. There were no flowers. There was no sound. The only bright color was the flashing red "No Vacancy" sign, even though the parking lot was completely empty. I turned off the engine. Silence fell like a lid over the world. I should have reversed. I should have gotten back on the road, gotten coffee at some 24-hour gas station, and driven another hour. But instead, I closed my eyes for 3 seconds. I took a deep breath, and I said out loud, as if that validated my decision, just one night. The truth is that no one becomes a truck driver if they are not running away from something. Sometimes it's about the city, the family, a failure, a name you carry. Sometimes it's just about yourself. In my case, it was a little bit of everything. My name is Nathan Holloway, and I was born in Tennessee, but I've been on the road since I left my home in Roanoke at age 19. I was one of those teenagers who slept with the radio on and my backpack ready. I worked as a waiter, a security guard, a plumber, and only calmed down when I discovered that, in the truck, I could disappear without leaving the country. It's strange how driving for hours on end along deserted highways can be at the same time liberating and inhumane. You stop thinking about time, stop thinking about people, and after a while, you start to forget that there is a you in there. That's how I got used to long routes, alternating between late-night deliveries and naps in gas station parking lots, eating whatever I could, drinking whatever I could handle, sleeping wherever I could. And in this poorly tailored routine, the body takes its toll, and the mind too. That night the sky was heavy, those low clouds of late autumn that seemed to press the whole world against the ground. It wasn't raining, but the air was humid, as if something was about to begin or end. I was carrying a light load, coming from Wheeling to Charleston. It was a simple, straight journey, but it required attention. The road was poorly lit, and at that time of year, animals crossed the road all the time. I should have stopped already. The dashboard read 10:42 at night when my eyes started to burn. My shoulders were tense, my legs were restless, and a headache was forming behind my eyes. On the radio, nothing but static. The cell phone has been without signal for more than 20 minutes. It was like driving through a grey dream. When I saw the sign for the Suncrest Hill Motel, it was almost like a sign, a chance to switch off for a few hours. It wasn't the kind of place that shows up on Google Maps. There was no review, but the road was that one, narrow, old, full of curves with dense forest on both sides, and the wooden sign was there, firm. Suncrest Hill Motel, silence guaranteed. And below, hand-painted in red, "We do not accept children." I didn't find it funny, but I didn't find it strange either. Roadside motels have bizarre rules. I've seen places that only accepted cash, places where you could only enter with a phone reservation, and even a motel in New Mexico that required guests to sign a waiver saying they assume the risk of unexplained noise. But that sentence, "We don't accept children," took a toll on me, as if it were less of a rule and more of a veiled warning. Still, I turned off my headlights, got out of the truck, and walked to the front desk. The Suncrest Hill Motel seemed to have stopped in time, maybe in the 70s. The paint on the facade was faded, with cracks forming webs under the windows. The outdoor light fixtures were thick, milky glass, held together with electrical tape and buzzing with accumulated dead insects. No cars in the parking lot other than mine. The reception area had a frosted glass door and a flashing red neon sign, "No vacancy." But that didn't make sense. The place seemed empty. Too much. I opened the door carefully. A bell rang too loudly. From the other side, the smell of old wood and brewed coffee hit me like a warm punch. The light inside was dim. The dark wood counter took up half the space. There was a switched-off tube TV in the corner, old magazines stacked on a crooked bookshelf, and a clipboard with handwritten notes. Behind the counter, a man, elderly, very pale. He wore a grey flannel shirt, buttoned to the neck, and his white hair was combed with military precision. His eyes were small, sunken, with an expression that seemed permanent, as if it was already there, before me. He looked at me slowly without smiling. "How long are you staying?" he asked, his voice hoarse, slow, almost thick. "1 night, maybe 2. It depends on how I wake up." He nodded without commenting. He picked up a heavy metal key with the number 4 engraved directly on the body and placed it on the counter. "Room at the end of the hall. The heater works. The water takes a while, but it comes out. Hot. Breakfast is not guaranteed." And here he looked up, unblinking. "We don't accept children." "All right," I replied. "It's just me." He held my gaze for a few more seconds, as if searching for a lie where there was none. Then he turned back to an open notebook, saying nothing more. I took the key and left. The night seemed darker when I returned outside. The light from the neon sign flickered behind me, casting red shadows on the concrete wall. I walked around the courtyard. Room number 4 was the last one in the left block. It stood beside a fence covered in dry ivy, with the forest just a few meters away. The doorknob was cold, a porta rangia. The room smelled of old disinfectant. It was small, with a double bed, a lamp on the small table, an oval mirror above the dresser, and a chair against the window. The carpet was thick, brown and muffled footsteps. I locked the door twice. I pushed the chair until it touched it, and I threw myself on the bed with the clothes on my back. I just wanted to sleep, but before sleep came completely, I heard laughter, children's lows, distant. Comment here, have you ever stayed in a place that seemed to know you before you even arrived? There are places that seem forgotten, others seem to remember too much. The Suncrest Hill Motel was one of the last. Every wall, every window, every crack seemed to observe. It wasn't big, In fact, it was even smaller than it looked from the entrance. 2 simple blocks of ground floor rooms, arranged like a roughly drawn L with a courtyard in the middle, cracked, dirty, with weeds growing over the edges. The reception area was located in the center between the 2 blocks. It was a 2-meter-high concrete cube with an opaque glass door covered by a stained, crooked awning. The neon sign flashed red, casting vibrant reflections on the bedroom windows. No vacancy, despite the completely empty parking lot. I could have sworn I was the only human being there. And yet, I felt like someone already knew I was coming. I climbed the 2 steps to the entrance. The doorknob was heavy, made of cold metal. The door opened with a sharp click and a bell rang overhead. The sound was too loud for such a quiet place. The environment enveloped me like a dead chamber. The smell was the first attack. Mold, old coffee and wet wood, all mixed with something slightly sweet, like expired children's perfume. The lights were dim, yellowish. There was a plastic-covered armchair near the wall, a bookshelf stacked with old magazines, and a small switched-off tube television in the corner. The wallpaper was peeling in spots, and the ceiling fan was spinning so slowly it felt like it was stuck in time. Behind the darkened wooden counter, sitting like part of the furniture, was he, the receptionist, an elderly man, pale, too thin, deep wrinkles around the eyes and mouth. He wore a neatly pressed grey flannel shirt, buttoned up to the neck. The hair was white, combed carefully back. And the eyes, a pale shade of blue, dull like those of a forgotten statue. He looked at me for long seconds before speaking, as if trying to recognize me from somewhere I've never been. "How long are you staying?" he asked in a hoarse, low, emotionless voice. "1 night," I replied. "Maybe 2. It depends on the weather tomorrow morning." He didn't answer. He just turned slowly, picked up a worn clipboard, and pulled out a pen taped to it. He scribbled something with exaggerated slowness, then opened a drawer and took out a heavy metal key with the number 4 engraved directly on it. "End of the left corridor. Back room. The heater works. Hot water takes a while, but it arrives. Breakfast. Unlikely. Check out by 11. He paused. "And here, we don't accept children." "Forgiveness?" He looked up again. "Children, not allowed. Not even accompanied. Not even in adjoining rooms. Not even at reception. Not even in the voices in the hallway." I was silent for a second. "Okay, it's just me. There are no children." He nodded slowly, as if he needed to hear it more than once. Then he turned his eyes back to the clipboard. The conversation was over. I took the key and left reception. The air outside felt different, colder. Or maybe the silence of the place made everything more sensitive. The light from the lamp above the door to room 1 flickered. The others were either faded or covered in dirt. I walked slowly down the outer concrete corridor. The sound of my footsteps echoed unevenly, as if the ground absorbed some of the impact. I passed by room 2, then the 3rd, all with the windows closed, thick curtains covering the inside. I arrived at room 4. The doorknob appeared to have been replaced recently. The scratched latch. The key turned with some resistance, and the door, as soon as I pushed, gave way with a long, whining creak. Inside, the atmosphere was even quieter. The room seemed bigger than I expected, but at the same time, narrow, as if the air was denser in there. Double bed with dingy white sheets, lampshade with yellowish glass dome, a chest of drawers with an oval mirror stained in the lower corner, a dark wooden chair leaned against the window, and a thick brown carpet that absorbed sounds as if it were part of the floor. I left the backpack on the floor. I tested the switch. The light worked, but it was weak, as if he was afraid of it spreading. I went to the bathroom, small, old tiles, thin towels, nothing special, nothing else. And yet, everything felt wrong, as if someone had cleaned the room in a hurry, or as if the room had never really been cleaned. I went back. I locked the door. I pushed the chair against her, just in case. I took off my coat and lay down on the bed. I closed my eyes. And then I felt. I didn't hear, I didn't see it. I felt it, a presence, as if something was watching me. Not from the window, not from the bathroom, but from inside the room. Minutes later, when sleep finally arrived, the whisper came with, "It, Nathan." I usually sleep easily, even in noisy or uncomfortable places. It's a talent that the road teaches early. Close your eyes, forget where you are, sleep. But that night, something was wrong. From the moment I lay down on that bed, with the mattress hard and the pillow as thin as folded cardboard, I felt the air heavy. It wasn't hot, not even cold. It was the feeling that someone was already in that room before me, and that didn't come out when I came in. I left the lamp on, but the light was dim, filtered through the sepia tone of the aged fabric. The room seemed to be bathed in a dead yellow. The shadows in the corners seemed denser than they should have been, and the chair against the window seemed to be turned slightly towards me, as if watching. Even with my body exhausted, sleep would not come. I turned from side to side, covered my face, pulled the pillow to try to get support. Nothing helped, until at some point I fell asleep, but not for long. I woke up, suddenly, without knowing why. It was like something had touched me or called. The lamplight was still on, but now weaker, as it is drained. The analog clock on the dresser read 2:47 a.m. I sat up in bed, my eyes still adjusting, dry mouth, the heart beating in an abnormal rhythm. That's when I heard it, for the first time, a childish voice, low, Clara, coming from outside the door. "Nathan." Frozen, I slowly turned my face away. The sound did not come from the window, not even from the bathroom. It was from the direction of the door, very close to the ground, as if someone was on the other side, kneeling, with the mouth resting on the lower wooden gap. "Nathan," he repeated, closer. It wasn't a high-pitched voice. It's not choral. She was serene, almost happy, almost intimate. I remained motionless for long seconds. Breathing became shallow. My body was sweating, but my hands were cold. I got up slowly, stepping lightly on the carpet so as not to make a sound. The lampshade kept swaying. The light flickered for no apparent reason. I went to the door. The heart was beating so loudly that it seemed to fill the whole room. I slowly knelt in front of the doorknob. I glued the eye to the peephole. The hallway, empty. No shadow, no sound. I stood there, watching, and then the voice came back. But this time it didn't come from the door. It came from the ceiling. "Nathan," he whispered. I looked up instinctively. The lining was straight, without any openings. No ventilation, no duct. And yet the sounds began. Steps, short, fast, irregular, like those of a barefoot child running in circles on the ceiling. It was no illusion. The sound was clear. It vibrated on the walls. It made the lampshade vibrate slightly. I ran to the chair and pushed it against the door harder. I closed all the locks again, even though they were already locked. I checked the window. It was closed, locked. The footsteps continued. Above the bed, above the dresser, above me. And then they stopped. Silence. I swallowed hard. I waited. Nothing. I went back to bed. I sat on the edge. I looked at the oval mirror above the dresser. My eyes were sunken, red, and behind me, for a split second, I saw something, a small shadow crossing the back of the room, opposite the light, download, quick, like a child running past the bed. I turned around immediately. Nothing. The chair was still, the curtain motionless, the walls silent. But now the lamp was off, and I hadn't turned off the light. I spent the rest of the night sitting, leaning against the headboard, with my cell phone light on. No other sound came, no new voices, just the weight of that unreal silence, which wasn't exactly empty. It was a silence that observed what I expected. At 6:12 in the morning, I finally decided to leave the room. Sunlight filtered through the treetops and reached the courtyard weakly. But for some reason, it didn't ring my bedroom door. I went out, looked around. No new cars, no guests. I walked to the reception. The elderly man was there, sitting property, as if he had never moved since the night before. He looked at me without surprise when I entered. I hesitated. but asked, "Was there anyone else here tonight?" He frowned, as if the question was incomprehensible. "Only you, sir," he replied. "No one passed through the hallway? No children?" He then did something that chilled me. He smiled, lightly, but without any humor. "We already told you, Mr. Holloway. Children are not allowed here. Comment here. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night to a voice that couldn't possibly be there? Have you ever heard your name said by someone who doesn't exist?" I woke up to morning light filtering through the thick curtain, as if the world outside were covered by a white sheet. The light was dim, free, and it brought with it a feeling I knew well. I hadn't really slept. It was as if my mind had stayed awake while my body pretended to rest. My head hurt. His eyes burned, and the name, Nathan, still echoed deep in my memory like a constant drop of water. I got up slowly, trying to regain some sense of reality. The lamp was on again, although I distinctly remembered it having turned off by itself in the middle of the night. The chair was still leaning against the door. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. The room smelled different, a subtle odor of something old, wet, and something sweet, like expired baby powder. I went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were sunken, the face paler than usual. The stubble on my beard made me look even more tired. I washed myself, put on my jacket, and left. The air outside was lighter but no more welcoming. The hill seemed shrouded in a mist that had not yet decided whether to rise or settle over the forest. The wind was not blowing. The trees did not move. It was as if time had stopped. I went to the reception. The same man was there, same posture, same shirt, same dead fish look. "Good morning," I ventured, trying to sound calmer than I felt. He looked up slowly. "Did you sleep well?" "Actually, no," I replied bluntly. "I thought I heard a child calling my name." He didn't react, didn't move. He didn't even blink. "As I said, Mr. Holloway, children are not allowed here." "I know, but it was like someone was outside my room, whispering." And then I hesitated. There were footsteps on the ceiling. He took a deep breath, never taking his eyes off me. "The structure is solid, no upper access. Perhaps you dreamed." "I know when I'm dreaming." He looked down, as if the conversation was over, as if it were all a routine nuisance, as if it had happened before. I went back to the room and sat on the edge of the bed. I felt alone, in a strange way, not as one who is alone, but as one who has been placed outside the world. I decided to walk around the courtyard for a bit, stretch my legs, and try to clear my mind. That's when I saw a man coming out of one of the rooms in the other block. He must have been in his early 50s, faded t-shirt, cap, backpack. He looked at me sideways, as if recognizing that he was not alone in that place for the first time. "Did you sleep badly too?" I asked, starting a conversation. He shrugged. "Here, nobody sleeps well." "Did you hear anything last night?" He looked around before answering, and then he came closer, speaking more quietly. "First time here. Absent. That happens to the new ones." "What exactly?" Out loud, the whisper, the steps. He scratched the back of his neck. "Room 4 is usually the favorite." "Preferred by whom?" He didn't answer. He just looked up, as if he heard something I couldn't hear, and then he murmured, "For some, soon. For others, it only gets worse." Before I could ask more, he walked away. He got into the car, started it, and drove down the hill at a moderate speed without looking back. I stood there, trying to digest those words. For some, it stops. Soon. For others, it only gets worse. I returned to the room as if carrying lead in my legs. When I opened the door, I was startled. The chair was in another position, facing the bed, as if someone had sat there, watching me while I slept. But I had pushed that chair against the door, I was sure, locked 2 laps. I looked around. Nothing seemed to have moved, but the air was colder, as if there was a cold draft coming from the ground. I looked under the bed. Nothing. In the bathroom. Nothing. But in the dresser mirror there was something new, a small stain on the inside of the glass, as if a small, dirty hand had touched it from the inside. I touched the surface. It was dry. I ran to the reception. The man was there, still there, as if he hadn't even breathed since the last time. Is there anyone else staying in room 4? Before me? No. Did anyone go in there yesterday? During the early hours of the morning? The keys are unique. Did you see anyone? He just stared at me. Do you believe in something supernatural? He gave a weak smile. The first, but it was the smile of someone who had seen too much. Here, we don't believe it. We respect it. And he turned his gaze to the wall. I returned to the room as if carrying a sentence. The late afternoon light cut through the forest like golden razors, but at the motel, she barely touched the walls. It was as if that hill was under another season, another time, another world. The number 4 on my bedroom door looked deeper, more scratched, as if someone had carved it in anger or despair. I pushed the door harder than I should have. It creaked again, this time louder, more dragged. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it. The chair was still facing the bed, the mirror with the light round stain on the inside, and the lamp, now off. I don't remember deleting it. I closed the door. I locked it. I pushed the chair back against her, this time more firmly. I sat on the bed. I didn't turn on the television, not even the cell phone radio. I didn't want noise. I wanted to understand what the silence in that room was. The sun went down early, and the night rose like a heavy curtain. I turned on the lamp. The yellowish light trembled a little, as if the filament were dancing inside the bulb. I lay down with my jacket over my chest, as if it could protect me from something that wasn't physical. But before I went to sleep, I checked everything again. Window, locked. Door, locked with 2. Turns, and the chair propped up. Bathroom, empty. Under the bed, clean. Dresser, nothing but a Bible without a cover. And yet, I didn't feel alone. I closed my eyes. The silence was almost aggressive, the kind that makes your ears ring because there's nothing else to fill the space, until it was filled. At 2:47, like a broken clock that still knows the time of the curse, the sounds returned. But it wasn't the voice. They were steps, this time clearer, faster, more numerous, on the ceiling. First, they came as light leaps, as if a child were hopping from one side to the other, then rushing from one corner to the other, then several pairs, as if more than one were up there. And then laughter. You get off shaved, as if they were laughing with their mouths full of dirt. I sat up in bed, frozen. I looked up. The ceiling was straight, no access, no panels, no false plaster, and yet the footsteps were there. Above the bed, above the dresser, above me. I got up slowly, stepping carefully. On the carpet, which muffled any noise, the lamp was still on, but I was shaking more. I went to the wall and put my ear to it. Touches, as if nails scraped the surface, deep inside, as if someone was trapped between the layers of the wall and was trying to get out. I turned my face away, my stomach churning. I went back to bed. I looked around, all the same, but the sound was no longer in the ceiling. He came down. Footsteps were now coming from the ground, light footsteps on the carpet. Between the bed and the door, I could hear the subtle creaking of wood beneath the carpet, as if someone small was circling around me, taking small steps back and forth. I turned to the side. The chair against the door was further away, as if it had been pushed back a few inches. And that's when I heard it again, a voice, but different from the night before. It was no longer a curious call. He was impatient, almost offended. "Why did you leave?" I got goosebumps all over. It wasn't a question someone random would ask. It was something intimate. "You promised me." The throat dried up. The hand was shaking. I grabbed my cell phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. I swept the room. Nothing. But when the light passed through the dresser mirror, for a second, my reflection didn't move. He stood still, staring at me, with eyes deeper than mine, with an expression that wasn't mine. I blinked. Everything went back to normal, but it was no longer possible to pretend that. It was a dream, or tiredness or any rational explanation. That was real, and it had a name and memory and anger. I spent the rest of the night awake, with the light on, cell phone in hand, backs against the wall. The steps slowed down around 4 a.m., but the silence that came after was worse, because it was the kind of silence that feels like waiting. At 6 a.m., I left the room as if I had been through a war. I walked to the reception. The man, still there. "I want to change rooms," he said. He looked at me unhurriedly. "Did room 4 bother you?" Something moved inside. There was noise in the ceiling, then on the floor, then in the mirror. He bowed slightly. "Are you Nathan Holloway?" "Absent." "He is sure." Franzi each. "Like this?" He leaned back in his chair, the cold smile again. "Just confirming." And then he completed. "Room 4 tends to trigger some memories." I walked back to the room with shaky legs. I lay down, even though I wasn't sleepy, even with fear. And when I finally closed my eyes, she came back, not with a whisper, but with a sentence that made my spine shiver. "Natey, are you back?" That's what she said, with that childish, thin voice, like a whistle inside your head. But what knocked me down wasn't the sound, nor the shock, nor the fact that I heard it inside the closed room. It was the nickname, Nate. No one has called me that since I was a child, since my grandmother was still alive. It was a loving way for her to wake me up on Sundays, or call me when she made hot chocolate and didn't want to shout through the house. "Natey, come eat before it gets cold." Or, "Natey, don't forget your coat." That nickname has been stored in the basement of my memory since she passed away, more than 20 years ago. My mother never used it, neither did my childhood friends, neither does my father. It was something exclusive, almost sacred. And now, a voice in the darkness of a musty room, in a cursed motel in the middle of nowhere, called to me. With him, I woke up like a zombie. The sun hadn't come out yet, but I needed to get out. I needed air. I splashed water on my face. The mirror showed me a strange reflection, pale, with sunken eyes and purple marks under the eyelids. That face wasn't mine, or it didn't seem like it anymore. I walked down to reception with short steps, my muscles locked with accumulated tension. The receptionist wasn't there. In its place, an old lamp illuminated the counter, and next to the pile of keys, a handwritten note. "Silence listens to you." I grabbed my car keys with shaking hands. I locked the room behind me, and I went to the city. Suncrest City was the kind you walk through without realizing it. A main street, a diner, a gas station, 2 churches, and a small grocery store that sold everything from nails to tub ice cream. I parked near the shop. The mechanic looked like something out of an old movie. Worn jeans, a greasy cap, and an unlit cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. "Problems on the road?" he asked without looking up. "Not exactly. I stayed at the motel on the hill. Suncrest Hill." He stopped. He literally froze with his hand still on the hood of an old Chevrolet. "Are you still using that place?" "It seems so." He nodded slowly, as if something had gone wrong just because I'd said it out loud. "You should leave. Now. Do you have any stories about it?" He looked into my eyes for the first time. "There are stories it's best not to tell, partner. Especially to people who've heard a call. Like this. Did someone call you?" Silence. My breathing became heavy. He understood the answer on my face. "Then it's past the point of leaving." I went back to the car, but something in me didn't want to run away yet. I needed to understand. I needed to name what was happening. I stopped at the town library. The place smelled of old paper and cheap disinfectant. There was only one attendant, a thin woman with a gray bun, her voice low and polite. "Do you have old files on disappearances or accidents at the Suncrest Hill Motel?" She didn't react with surprise. He just nodded and went to the back, returning with a cardboard box full of folders, old newspapers, and microfilm. I spent hours there, going over names, faces, dates, police reports, and then I found it. Emily Grace Holloway. Holloway. My last name. I had to read it 3 times to believe it. The newspaper was from October 1986. The headline, "Girl Mysteriously Disappears from Hillside Motel. Police search for clues." Emily was 9 years old. She was described as a reserved child with big eyes and brown hair. She had gone to spend a few days with her older brother, who worked as a truck driver and was taking her to visit her grandmother. But Emily disappeared from her room during the early hours of the morning. The door is locked, the window intact, no signs of escape, kidnapping, or any movement. She just disappeared. The brother went into shock. He was hospitalized. Days later, with a psychotic episode, he said he heard his sister's voice every night, asking to play, and that she lived on the roof. I closed my eyes. Everything was spinning. The library, the words, the years that seemed to fold over my head. Emily Grace Holloway, and she called her brother, Nate. My heart raced. His hands were sweating, but not out of fear, of recognition. I didn't have a sister, at least not that I remembered. But as a child, I had strange dreams, with long corridors, with a girl in a white dress, with a doll without eyes, and with laughter in the dark. My parents always said it was just imagination. But what if part of my memory had been blocked? What if that wasn't just a newspaper story, but a reflection of what really happened to me and was erased? My grandmother used that nickname. Emily disappeared from the same motel, and he had the same last name, and an older brother named Natey, i.e. you. I returned to the motel late in the afternoon. The sky had that leaden hue that precedes a storm. The air was still, no sound of wind, no leaves moving. I went up to room 4 as if I were entering a profane sanctuary. Opened the door, the chair still in place. The bed is made, but about the pillow, a doll, old, hand sewn, with eyes gouged out, and on the chest, a name embroidered in black thread, Emily. Going back to that motel after everything I'd read wasn't a choice. It was an impulse, an anchor. A part of me already knew, even if I didn't want to accept it, that this story wasn't just a sinister coincidence. It was personal. Emily, the nickname, the same surname, the dates. Now everything was spinning around the same dark spiral. When I re-entered the Suncrest Hill Motel, the lobby was empty. No sound, no sign of the receptionist. The clock on the wall was stopped, 2:47. I stood there for minutes in silence, trying to figure out where to begin. It was then that I heard the tinkling of wind chimes, but the sky outside was still. There was no wind. I followed the sound to one of the corridors behind reception. The light there was dimmer and the smell stronger. Mold, rust, and something too sweet, like dead flowers. At the end of the corridor, a half-open door. Inside, an old room, full of folders, documents, and cardboard boxes. I picked up one of them, covered in dust, and dragged it close to the only window. It was the kind of file that no one should touch. Old guest records, invoices from past decades, copies of documents, faded photographs. I began to leaf through it in silence. There, among receipts and contracts, I found a hand-marked folder, Holloway E, 1986. My hands were shaking. Shelter, inside a registration form. Nome, Emily G. Holloway, age 9, entry date, October 17th, 1986. Escort, Nathan Holloway. Notes, guest returning after 5 years. Usual room, 4, 5 years earlier. I've never been there. Or was I? In the folder, there was also a handwritten note, probably from someone on the motel staff. The girl talks to herself. She plays in the hallway at night. She said she lives here. She said her brother forgot about her. I closed the folder. My memories didn't help. I began to question whether I could have really erased something so profound, or if this place was reminding me of things that never existed. I decided to look for someone in the city who might have experienced it firsthand. I went to the Suncrest General Store, a grocery store with everything: food, ammunition, cigarettes, magazines from 1998, and most importantly, old residents sitting in rocking chairs on the porch. I approached one of them, A man with white hair, a wrinkled face and small eyes. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Have you heard about the case of the girl who disappeared from the motel here on the hill?" He didn't respond immediately, but the smile, he had disappeared. It was replaced by a distant look, as if he were watching an old movie inside his own head. "Emily Holloway," he said finally. "October 17th. It was raining that night. I was working at the gas station and I saw them arrive. The red truck. She got out with a doll in her arms. She didn't look at anyone, but she smiled at nothing. And the brother? Closed guy. Too young to take care of her alone, but he seemed to protect her with everything. Do you remember what happened next? Gone. Just like that. With the snap of a finger. No sound, no trace. The police came, ransacked the entire motel. Nothing. And since then, that place has never been the same. What do you mean? People hear things there, they see things. Some people disappear for a few hours, others never leave. But he, she said, pointing her finger at me, the brother, he acted strange afterward, changed. He said he'd promised to come back, that she'd call him again. I felt my stomach sink. Do you remember his name? The old man looked at me as if he already knew the answer. Nathan, but everyone called him Natey. I took a step back. The air was lacking. My legs gave out. I never told him my name. That night I sat in the car and thought about leaving. But how can we leave everything like this? How can I live the rest of my life without knowing if a part of my soul is trapped there? I took out my cell phone and looked for public state archives. I found an old website that compiled records of disappearances, archived reports, and comments from local residents. One of the posts said, "Emily Holloway can still be heard in room 4. Sometimes in the hallway. They say she asks if her brother is back yet, and when she hears his name, she smiles." Other, "I worked at the Suncrest Hill Motel in 1997. I heard footsteps on the ceiling, a child's voice. I quit the next day. It took me years to sleep without the light on." And one more, "The girl in the white dress is still there. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She just wants to play. She just wants him to keep his promise." It was at that moment that I realized maybe I wasn't being haunted. Maybe I was being called back, called to remember, to fulfill, to close something that was left open, or to take a place. Now the question was, what if I had never really left? Maybe my mind has built a life, and only now did reality catch up with me, because time there seemed doubled, and the line between what was real and what was mine dissolved with every passing minute. I returned to the motel late in the afternoon. The sky was already darker than it should have been for that hour. The sun seemed to have given up shining there, as if it knew there was nothing left to illuminate that forgotten patch of hill. I parked the car with the engine still running for a few seconds. Part of me wanted to drive away and disappear, but another part, a part that gave me chills just by existing and wanted to know more. I walked slowly up the front steps. The wood creaked under my weight, as if screaming at me to turn back. At the reception, the receptionist was in the same place, as if he hadn't moved for a second since the last time I saw him. "Are you staying another night?" he asked in a drawling, emotionless voice. I nodded, trying to appear calm. I took the key to room 6, which he handed me without looking me directly in the eye. Before going up, I ventured a question. "Were you here in 1986? He took a while to answer. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. "I used to work here, yes." "Why? Do you remember a girl, Emily Holloway?" His hand, which was holding an old coffee cup, trembled slightly. "You shouldn't mess with that boy. I've seen a lot of people try to understand what happened here. No one leaves better than when they came in. Better to forget." "I can't forget. I think she knows me. And I think I know her." He looked at me as if he'd heard it before. Maybe he had. "There's a room in the basement, an old storage room. It should never have been used, but that week," he swallowed hard, "someone put her there. They say it was her brother. They say he lost his mind. But he was a child, wasn't he?" "It was, but not all trauma behaves like a child. Sometimes a 12-year-old can do things that even an adult wouldn't, and sometimes we just try to erase it." That cut me up inside. I returned to room 6, the key clutched in my hand. Night fell faster than I expected. The wind seemed to blow through the cracks in the window, even though it was closed. The air had a metallic taste, as if time there were oxidizing everything. I sat up in a bed and opened my laptop. Still connected to the motel's weak Wi-Fi, I searched through old files, scanned newspapers, anything related to the 1986 case. That's when I found it. Brother of missing girl is hospitalized after claiming to hear his sister's voices at the motel where she disappeared. Date, October 1994. My blood ran cold. The report was clear. The brother, Nathan Holloway, had been hospitalized after a suicide attempt. He claimed Emily called him every night that she was alive, trapped somewhere within the motel walls, and that he needed to come back and play. Nathan, my name. I was never sure about my past. I was adopted at age 12, according to my documents, but I never knew much more than that. Previous records had been lost in a flood, they said, and the most bizarre, the photo that accompanied the article, a thin boy, dark hair, empty look. I recognized that look because it was the same thing I saw in the mirror every day. In the same news, another excerpt froze me. According to doctors, the boy displayed signs of dissociation and created alternate versions of his story. Doctors say Nathaniel created a new identity as a psychological defense. Was I him? The name, the age, the face. If all this was real, why didn't anyone ever tell me? Or worse, did the person who adopted me know? Maybe I'd been running my whole life from a truth that was locked away in that basement room. The clock flashed 2:47. Again, he did this on other nights too. But this time, along with the beeping sound, came something else, a laugh, weak, on the other side of the door. I stood up slowly, my skin prickling as if needles were crawling along my spine, opened the door. The corridor was empty, but a doll, yes, a doll, one of those old rag dolls with its eye sewn shut, was on the floor, right in the center of the hallway. She wasn't there before. And attached to the doll, a note. "Natey, you promised." I fell to my knees. The memory came like an avalanche. Me in the dark room, she crying, scared. The door is locked. The words I repeated before leaving, "Just stay here for a little while, okay? I promise I'll be back. I'll be back. We'll play more. I swear, Emily." But I never came back. I ran away. I deleted it. I buried it. And now, she was calling me back. Because for her, it was still the same night. It was still 1986. I looked up. The hallway was still empty. But the doll was now closer to the door. Or had I moved? I took the note and, with trembling hands, put it in my pocket. I turned around and went down the stairs to the side hallway, the one that led to the basement, the same one the receptionist had mentioned. A part of me knew it was there, that she never left there. The door at the end of the hallway was ajar. There was a dim orange light, like a candle burning somewhere, and that's when I heard it clearly for the first time. No whispers, no walls, no distortion. "Natey, you're back." My hand stopped on the doorknob. My heart seemed to be pounding in my neck. The truth was behind that door, but I could still escape. Have you ever had the feeling that some doors, once opened, never close again? So comment below. I would listen too. The basement doorknob was cold, so cold it felt like it burned my skin when I closed my fingers around it. The wood of the door was damp, as if I'd been crying all night. The hallway behind me seemed to breathe, and every second I hesitated, I felt as if the motel itself were pushing me in. I pushed slowly. The door creaked, revealing a short staircase that descended into a dark space, dimly lit by a single hanging bulb, swaying gently as if someone had just passed by. That smell, it wasn't just mold, it was sweet, sour, like forgotten candy mixed with something that had rotted years ago. A scent of a distorted childhood, poisoned by time. I got off. Each step creaked under my weight, as if the structure hadn't been touched in decades. My footsteps were swallowed by silence, and when I reached the end, the room opened up into a small, almost claustrophobic space. a rusty iron children's bed, a cracked toy chest in the corner, peeling walls, and in the center, a rug with faded designs of little stars and teddy bears. And about the carpet, a girl of coasts, dirty blonde hair, wavy, disheveled, falling to the shoulders. She was playing with something, dolls maybe. She couldn't see clearly. My whole body froze. Emily? She turned her head slowly, but not her body, and he smiled. A sad, familiar smile, almost grateful. Naty, you're back. My knees went weak. It was the same voice that whispered, the same one that woke me every night, the same one that invaded my name, my soul, my identity. But there, it no longer sounded like a haunting voice. It seemed like longing. I didn't remember you, Emily, I swear. I tried to follow. I didn't know. She gestured with her hand, asking for silence. There's no more time to remember. They're coming. Before I could ask who, the lamplight flickered, once, twice, and then it exploded. We were in total darkness for 3 seconds too long. When the light came back on, she was no longer alone. There were shadows in the corners, tall, stretched, shapeless, but with eyes, or rather holes where eyes should be. One of them moved, another hissed like wind through cracks. Emily was still sitting, but now she was looking at me with fear. They don't like you here. You should have taken me sooner. I tried to move closer, but the shadow's eyes narrowed. A pressure hit my chest, as if something was pushing me back without touching me. Who are they, Emily? I asked, fighting the fear that tried to drag me back upstairs. They run the place now. They're part of it, always have been, since before us. I just wanted to play, but they locked me in. You can leave. I'll get you out of here. She lowered her head. Only if you take my place. Silence. The shadows moved faster, and then, for the first time they spoke, but not with words. It was like a roar, a howl of hundreds of voices mingling together, a sound of broken memories, muffled screams, broken promises. It reverberated inside my mind like waves of pain. Run, she whispered, and her eyes were now black, completely black, like the drawings on the desk. I backed up the stairs. I stumbled up the first few steps, my heart racing and tears in my eyes. Emily shouted behind me, a scream that wasn't hers. It belonged to everyone. It echoed through the stairs, through the motel, through the forest outside, a scream of decades, of trapped souls, of secrets buried in that forgotten room. When I reached the hallway again, the basement door slammed shut by itself. 3 times. Bam, bam, bam. Locked. The corridor was dark. I ran to room 6 without thinking. I slammed the door shut and pushed the dresser against it. The room was colder than ever. The lamp flickered. The walls seemed to breathe. And the rag doll was now on the bed with a new ticket. Stay just one more night. I started packing everything, desperate, no sense in it, just throwing clothes into my backpack, trembling, tripping over my own feet. When I left the room and hurried down to reception, there was no one there anymore, not even a receptionist. They are not guests, I'm not. The whole world seemed suspended. My car was still there. I tried the key, and for the first time, it worked. No glitches, no creaks, but something told me it wasn't a favor. It was permission. I looked in the rearview mirror before leaving. On the second floor, in the window of room 6, Emily, standing, looking at me, with the doll on her lap, and a tear running down one of the black eyes. The road opened up before me. The sky remained grey, the forest surrounded me, but the world somehow seemed smaller, and I, incomplete. Part of me stayed there. Part of me is still Naty, and part of me wants to go back. But if you ever pass by the Suncrest Hill Motel and hear a childish voice calling your name, do not answer. The road seemed only a few meters from the parking lot. All I had to do was start the truck, make the turn and leave that place behind. But something inside me knew that escaping wouldn't be that simple. Apparently the engine was running, the lights were on, the dashboard was flashing as usual. But when I pressed the pedal, the truck didn't move. I put it in reverse. Nothing. First gear. Nothing. Monday. The engine roared, but the wheels seemed locked to the concrete. I looked in the rearview mirror. Nothing behind, but the shadow of the building seemed to have lengthened until it reached my tires, as if the motel itself was holding me back. I took a deep breath. I turned off the engine, and I tried to do what any desperate person would do. I ran away. I ran across the courtyard, toward the front gate where the gravel road zigzagged down the hill. But when I got there, the entrance was no longer there. The overgrown weeds had covered everything. There was no more road sign, plaque, nothing, as if the outside world had been erased, and only the motel at the top of that hill, suspended in time, remained. I tried calling 911, no signal. I tried to mark my location on the GPS, nothing. The blue dot kept spinning around, as if I was in a place that didn't exist. I returned to the reception area. It was dark. The lights flickered rhythmically as if the place was breathing through electricity. The reception bell was gone. The ledger was closed. But a new name had been added to the last line: Nathan Holloway, room 6, 3 nights. But I never signed anything. I never wrote my name there. And even if I had, who would have known that my full name was Nathaniel? A chill ran down my spine. I returned to the room as if something was leading me there. The doorknob was locked, but the door opened by itself with a dry click. Inside, my bags were rummaged through, the clothes folded on the bed. The doll was still there, but now it was holding a miniature sheet of paper. It was a photo, my photo, me, 6 or 7 years old, sitting next to a little blonde girl, Emily, in my grandmother's backyard in rural Maryland. I hadn't seen that image for over 30 years. Underneath the photo, the caption written in a child's pen, "Natey and Emmy, always together." I sat on the floor. My knees were shaking, my chest was aching. It was impossible. My mother never told me about an Emily. My grandmother died when I was 10 years old, and no one ever mentioned that girl. But there she was, in the photo, and now inside me. I looked back at the window. The forest danced in the wind, but it wasn't a natural wind. It was as if the hill was breathing, as if that place had a life of its own. I tried to write a message in my notepad. If I disappear, look for the Suncrest Hill Motel in West Virginia. But when I looked again, the text had changed on its own. Don't worry, he's part of the family now. My whole body froze. I pulled my suitcase, tried to run downstairs, but the corridor seemed longer than before. Every door I passed had a sound behind it. Muffled cries, children's laughter, whispers of voices saying my name. "Nate, Natey, stay with us. Don't go away. You promised." The walls were shaking. Finally, I reached the emergency exit. I pushed hard. Locked. I went to the reception window. Locked too. Main door? The doorknob turned, but it seemed glued to the frame. I went back up, now tripping over my own feet. I entered the room. On the mirror, written blurrily, "Now you live here." And below, a date, October 28th, 1989. The year my grandmother died. The year in which, according to town stories, Emily disappeared. The year I was apparently there too, but forgot. Maybe the motel brought me back. Maybe I never really left. I lay down on the bed. The mattress was cold, but I didn't fight. The voices began to quiet down. Little by little, the doll became more distant. The light flickered, but I didn't care anymore. I felt a small hand hold mine. "Thanks for coming back, Natey." I closed my eyes, and I let the night swallow me. I don't know how long I lay in that bed. It felt like I had slept for years, or maybe for a few minutes. Everything was indistinct, as if time in there didn't follow the same logic as the rest of the world. I woke up to natural light streaming through the curtains, but it wasn't like before. The sky didn't have the same tone. It was a light, whitish gray without definition, cloudless, no sun. I got up slowly. My head was throbbing, but the room looked exactly like the first night. The doll was no longer there. The note on the desk was gone. The photo of my childhood, which was once in my hands, was now gone. I looked around more carefully. There were no more clothes on the bed. My bags had been put back in the closet, as if I had never touched them. The bathroom door was ajar, and in the mirror, still fogged up with some Non-existent vapor, just one word. Welcome. I tried to open the bedroom door. She unlocked it easily. The hallway was quiet. No laughter, no whispers, no presence. I went down the side stairs, treading carefully. I didn't know what to expect when I turned the corner and entered reception, but what I saw was normal. Too much even. The receptionist was there, wearing the same brown vest, with the same look of someone who had seen more than he should have. But something about him seemed different, younger, or more lucid. He looked up when he saw me and gave me a tight smile. "Good morning, Mr. Holloway. Did you sleep well?" My throat went dry. I want to leave," I replied. "I need to check out." He nodded, a slow nod. "Of course. Everything is in order. Room 6, 3 nights." "3?" I asked. "But He slid a white envelope across the counter. "Your receipt. We've already charged your credit card." "But I didn't even show the card," I muttered. He stared at me firmly. "The house already knows you, Mr. Holloway." I took the envelope with trembling hands. On the outside there was only my name. Inside, a receipt with an entry date and no exit date. Just a solid line, as if my stay hadn't ended yet. I turned my back, ignoring any formality. I walked across the yard toward my truck. The air seemed lighter, the sky clearer. The noise of the forest had returned. I started the engine. "This time," he responded. The wheels came off the concrete with a slight jolt, and for the first time in 3 days, or 3 decades, I don't know, the entrance gate was open. The gravel road awaited me, untouched, as if nothing had happened. I drove slowly, almost afraid that it would all disappear again. But the world around seemed real, normal. Traffic signs, outdoors, people, everything came back, but nothing inside me was the same anymore. When I stopped at a gas station in the nearest town, I went straight to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. He was paler, with deep dark circles, and something in the eyes, a kind of absence, as if a part of me had remained. When I left, I bought a coffee and started a conversation with the gas station attendant. I asked casually, "Do you know if the Suncrest Hill Motel is still in operation?" The man stopped what he was doing, slowly. Then he shrugged. "That thing up there? Nobody's used it since, I don't know, 1990. There was some sinister stuff. A kid went missing, a small fire, and after that, nobody went there. But I was there," I replied. "This week." He let out a short laugh. "Impossible. The county closed it down. It's all abandoned, overgrown. There's no access anymore." I stood still, speechless. I went back to the truck. I opened the glove compartment. I looked for the envelope with the receipt. He was still there. But now, the paper inside was blank. No name, no dates, just one sentence, handwritten. "Thanks for playing with her. Come back anytime." I left West Virginia that day, or at least that's what I thought. The road seemed to lead out. Cars crossed my path again. The birds began to sing again. The rain began to fall lightly on the windshield again. But there's something that never went away. Since that trip, every night at 2:47 a.m., I wake up. No alarm clock, no noise, no reason. I just wake up, and I stay there lying down, looking at the ceiling, feeling that presence in the corner of the room, that shadow that never moves, but that I know is watching me. There was one time I got up to drink water, and in the kitchen I found something on the floor, a piece of paper folded in 4. On the back, a crayon drawing, a child holding hands with a man wearing a cap, the same one I wear on the road. Below, written in shaky handwriting, "Play with me again?" I burned that paper. I tore it. I threw it away. But the next night, he was back, folded, identical, in the same place. Since then, I never sleep with the light off, and I keep the doors locked with chains, padlocks, and iron bars. No, because I think it will prevent something from getting in, but because I feel better, pretending I have some control. A few months ago, I received a call from a local truck driver center. A rookie passing through West Virginia called them, terrified. He said he was trapped in an old motel where a child knocked on the door every night. The place? Suncrest Hill. The city said it has been abandoned since the 1980s, but the guy swears he slept there. And on the receipt, there was a handwritten note. You have 3 nights, she misses you. And now I tell you this, because if one day, for whatever reason, you decide to take a detour, if you follow a calmer route between hills and forests, and come face to face with a half-faded sign that reads Suncrest Hill Motel since 1972, go straight on. Do not enter, don't touch, don't look at the reception, and above all, if you hear a child's voice calling your name during the night, don't answer. If you've made it this far, tell me, did you hear anything too? Comment below. I heard it too. That way, I'll know you've been through this whole journey with me. And if these stories give you chills, if you enjoy this kind of dark, mysterious and disturbing story, then subscribe to the channel. There are many sinister things that I will still tell you here. Stories that almost no one has the courage to share. Stories that, perhaps, should never be told, but somehow they reach you. So activate the bell, leave a like and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And do you believe what you just heard? Because sometimes believing is what opens the door, and some doors never close again.